As we discussed earlier in this course, there are times when it's probably best to not display data in some kind of a chart or a graph, but to focus on one specific data point and then apply some kind of graphical treatment to it to help draw the eye to it. If we switch back to the final version of the infographic, the PDF document, you can see that for solar energy, I've kind of focused on here what the average cost might be to install a solar PV system in a home. And I also called out this data point for wind energy, how California is leading the US in that department. So let's see how we can create these graphical data points in our own infographic. I'm going to switch back to Illustrator, and let's start with the solar aspect of it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here on this part of the document. And the first thing I want to do is I want to change the type treatment here. I want to kind of raise the level of how much the cost actually is. So I'll switch to my type tool, and I'm going to triple click 1, 2, 3 to select basically that entire line, Command X or Control X to cut it, and I'll just click on a blank area right here with the Command key to deselect that text object, and then click to define a new text object and Command V or Control V to paste. There's an extra line here. I'm simply going to delete that. I'll switch to my selection tool, drag it over here into the house, and change its color to white. Now I want to increase the point size on this. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Command Shift and then greater than sign, or Control Shift greater than sign if you're on Windows. Let's make it nice and big, around that big. I'm going to switch to my text tool and just highlight the $sign and open up my character panel and specify that that should be a superscript. I actually see that I have some more room to make this text a little bit bigger. So I'll go ahead now and select the whole thing and click again on the character panel here and change the point size to maybe 38 point. Yeah, that should be just fine. And the letter K does not need to be bold or as big, so I'm simply going to highlight the K, change its typeface from bold back to regular, and maybe change that to about 30 point. That looks pretty good. I can actually just optically nudge it so that it fits nice inside of that little house. Maybe just bring it up just a drop here. And I still want to add something a little bit more to this. It doesn't really have a border around this, but I want something to be able to lead the eye to this graphic and kind of define almost a border in itself. And I thought, initially, houses have like a white picket fence around it, but I wanted to do something a little bit more interesting than that. So I went perusing through some of the libraries that Illustrator comes with in regard to symbols. So I'll go here to the Symbols panel, and you can see that I have a symbol here called Grass 4. I actually found that in one of the libraries that come with Illustrator. Again, if you click on the library icon right here, you can choose Nature, and in Nature, if you scroll through, you'll see that there's one here called Grass 4. And I basically just added that by clicking on it to this document. Now that I have the symbol here, I can actually just take it and drag it out onto the artboard. Now I'm going to switch to my selection tool here, and I'm simply going to create several copies of this. I can click basically and drag while holding the Shift key and also the Option key. And because I have Smart Guides on, it will snap right here to the end. And then once I've created one of them, I can now press Command D or Control D a few more times. So now that I have a total of 6 copies, I'm actually going to select all these 6 copies right now by Shift clicking on them all. Command G or Control G to group them. And now I'll go ahead and just nudge it into position. That looks kind of nice. I'm actually going to take this text right here, kind of bring that down just a little bit so that it's kind of on the same baseline as the 20K value. And I just want to make sure that all these elements are grouped together. So an easy way to do this, by the way, instead of shift clicking on each of the individual objects, is the marquee select everything. But just remember that my background is not locked. So if I were to start dragging from right about here and click and drag across all these, then all these elements plus the background become selected. So now I can hold down my Shift key and then click on the background to deselect that. And now only these elements are selected. I can press Command G or Control G to turn this into a group. And now I've created a beautiful graphic focused on this one data point. Let's move over here to the wind section and focus on how we'll do this with the state of California. Now this image of the state of California is actually something I got through clipart. So what I'm going to do is have the text kind of wrap around the state. It's kind of works really nicely over here that I have this type of shape on the inside part of the state. So I want to create something called a text wrap. That's just going to make it easier so that I don't have to actually physically go ahead and indent or adjust the type. So I'm going to start by taking the actual type itself by selecting it. And I'm also going to hold down the Shift key and select this background. And I'm going to click and then hold the Shift key down to constrain it and move it over to the left. But you can see over here that the text falls behind the state of California. I want the text to basically wrap around this side of the shape. So the way that you work with text wraps inside of Illustrator is that you select the piece of art that you want to have the wrap applied to it. Basically, I want to create some kind of force field around this object right here so that text can't overlap this image. The first thing I have to make sure is that this image itself, or this piece of artwork, is currently sitting higher in the stacking order than the text itself. So for text wraps to work in Illustrator, the image has to be above the text in the stacking order. That's the case right here. So now I'm going to go to the Object menu. I'm going to scroll down to where it says Text Wrap, and I'm going to choose Make. And now you can see that there's this invisible border that now appears around the shape, and the text can't go within that border. Now I just want to modify the text somewhat because it doesn't look that great right now. So I'm simply going to select the text, and because this is an area text object, I can simply click on this handle right here and drag it so that the text reflows. So I'm going to choose to maybe bring it in just a little bit more, just like that. I like the way the breaks appear right now. But I want to adjust the blue background to match, so I'm going to select the blue background, make it a little bit wider, maybe down to about here, and then bring it in just like this. Once again, I want to group all these elements together, so I'm going to click and drag to select all these elements, deselect the background by shift-clicking, and then I'll press Command-G or Control-G to go ahead and group that. So now let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit here. And in a few short steps, we've been able to take some data points that may have been uninteresting to read before, but now with these graphical treatments, they really stand out and they draw the eye right into them. Let's go ahead and save our work. I'm going to go to the File menu, choose Save As. Let's call this one 08. Click Save and then click OK. And we're getting really close now to finishing up our infographic on renewable energy.